Welcome to the Vertical MRO Podcast, brought to you by Vertical HeliCASTS and in partnership with Vertical Magazine. In this two-part series, I sit down with experts in the health and usage monitoring systems, which is also known as the HUMS segment. These experts are Kethan and Ronnie Ries from GPMS. In this two-part series, we'll explore how HUMS technology is revolutionizing the maintenance industry and is improving helicopter flight safety. This conversation was recorded shortly after Verticon, kicking off with a discussion on the value of attending industry conferences. We delve into the inaugural Vertical MRO conference dedicated specifically to the MRO community. This exciting event will take place October 7th through 9th at the KF Center for Excellence in Kelowna, British Columbia, and again from November 10th through 12th at the Irving Convention Center in Irving, Texas. During this conversation, Kethan provides an interesting overview of his career, where he spent time as a maintainer in the challenging offshore environment. He talks about the transition from offshore work to air medical services and how his do hard things mindset has shaped his experiences and opportunities within the MRO community. Josh and Ronnie highlight the latest advancements in HUMS technology, the significance of data analytics and maintenance, and the exciting potential of condition-based maintenance to transform aviation practices. Together, we'll review real-world applications and success stories, emphasizing the need for a structured approach to maintenance decisions and the advantages of adopting innovative technologies in aviation.
Special thanks to our sponsors for this podcast, Precision Aviation Group and Airbus.
Welcome to the Vertical MRO Podcast, brought to you by Vertical HeliCASTS.
All right, everyone, you're ready to contact. You're cleared to the Bravo.
The Vertical MRO Podcast explores the fascinating world of helicopter maintenance, repair, and overhaul with your host, Val Medved.
Now, line altimeter 3029, approved as requested.
The podcast features helicopter technicians, mechanics, engineers, and MRO experts who share invaluable industry insight, knowledge, and stories that will inspire current and aspiring industry maintainers.
Hey, welcome to the Vertical MRO Podcast. I'm your host today, Jon Gray, filling in for Val Medved. Honored to be here with our guests for today. We're going to have a conversation that I love having, talking about technology. I think in aviation, the subject of technology has solved a lot of problems and has increased our safety threshold exponentially. One of our guests, Ronnie Ries, is someone who's been on both the Vertical MRO Podcast and the Hangar Z podcasts. So honored to have you in, Ronnie. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Long-time listener, third-time caller.
Yeah, I had a chance to catch up with you at Verticon for a bit. It was good to see you there.
It was great. What an amazing show, as always. But being in Dallas, having two different aircraft launches for the first time in a long time, having Robinson move up to the next level category, Airbus bringing new things to the game, plus everything else going on, it's just, you can't beat it.
Yeah, it was the busiest Verticon that I can remember going to, and those announcements were really exciting. I was happy to see that. Really cool to see Robinson kind of move into this next step and the airframe evolve. Who would have thought? I never would have thought you'd see that aircraft platform the way it looks. They did a great job, so that was exciting. Josh, Kethan, you're also with us. This is my first time talking to you, and I'm excited to get into today's conversation. You've got a really interesting background, one that's you've got a wealth of experience in both the maintainer side and the technology side. So thank you for joining us on the MRO podcast.
Glad to be here, John. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, for sure. On the heels of Verticon, I think about conferences, and what I like about conferences is the education, the networking, and training. The networking is a big part of that. But you go to Verticon and you get a chance to talk to like-minded folks. All of us in the helicopter industry, we get this one opportunity, or maybe 2 or 3 a year, to get together and talk about what we love. What I'm really excited about is the Vertical MRO conference that we're launching. That's going to be geared specifically towards maintainers in our community. And I think that'll be really cool because, you go to Verticon, it's everything. We're focused on the operation as a whole. And I feel like a lot of times the maintenance gets kind of pushed in a corner, and that should be the forefront of a lot of these conversations. So that's what the Vertical MRO conference is going to do. Ronnie, you guys are supporting the Vertical MRO conference, which I'm super thankful for. You're actually going to be presenting there. You're going to do a presentation and lead a panel. Can you talk about your guys' decision, one, to support the conference, but also some of the information you plan on discussing in the panel and also the presentation you're going to lead?
Yeah, absolutely. We are super excited about this event. As you're saying, the unsung heroes behind the scenes are the maintenance teams that make these aircraft fly every single day. When you think about everything, the amazing thing that these aircraft do, from fighting fires to taking people offshore to creating a safer public environment, right? Air medical, everything. At the end of the day, if the aircraft can't fly because of a maintenance issue, then those things don't happen.
Right.
So we're very excited to support the unsung heroes behind the scenes, making sure that these aircraft fly every single day. And you're right. Most of these shows, APSCON, AMTC, even Verticon, and so forth, they're tailored to different audiences. You're typically seeing flight nurses, chief pilots, operations, safety managers, all critical parts of the ecosystem that helicopters fly in. But at the end of the day, the knowledge behind the scenes of everything that maintainers have to do every single day, ASBs, technical bulletins, service bulletins, maintenance manuals, all these different things. There's a lot of educated people that are doing things that aren't really recognized on a daily basis. And so with Vertical coming out with these conferences dedicated to helping these people, it's a great thing to see.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say from our conference and the presentation I'm doing, it's called Making the Business Case for HUMS. And we'll talk about what HUMS is a little bit today, but at the end of the day, when you talk about most A&Ps or AMEs or whatever you want to call them, whatever they call themselves, a lot of these folks didn't necessarily go to college, right? They never had to necessarily make business cases before to their leadership. And so what we're trying to do is help them understand the different players that you're going to need to do to sell the system to, and how to present this in a way that makes financial sense, right? Anytime that you make a change to a helicopter or upgrade a helicopter, there has to be some kind of return on investment. And that's what we're really going to do is MPs, so the tools that they need to make this business case to their leadership.
Yeah, what you're talking about, the education that surrounds that specific aspect of the maintenance world is really important. And I think that's what we're missing a lot of the times at the big conferences, is that specific focus on the maintenance side and how that'll improve operations, how to make the business case. And I think there's still somewhat of a general misunderstanding of what HUMS is and what it can do for the industry as a whole, on the maintainer level. So it'll be great to see you present there. Can you talk about the panel a little bit?
One of the great things about the first Vertical MRO conference happening in Kelowna is that that's the lifeblood of Western Canadian operations, right? Many of our operators are out there: Coldstream, Summit helicopters, Blackcomb helicopters. I can go on and on. And those aircraft are dedicated to heli skiing, transporting people, firefighting, obviously, and so forth. And at this last Verticon, we hosted a panel of operators who are using HUMS for the very first time over the last year. And we want to give them the opportunity to present to their peers all the strengths, weaknesses, challenges, and opportunities that they're seeing with what HUMS is bringing to the table. Because at the end of the day, as a HUMS provider, we can tell you exactly what benefits that you're going to get, but the reality comes when you install the system and you turn it on for the first time. And how do you learn about what it does, what it can do for you, how it's going to transform your maintenance and operations, and what their procedures are. So if this panel comes together, which I'm very excited and hope that it will, we'll have panels of operators using HUMS in that area to talk again to their peers about what they're seeing and how it's helped them so far.
Yeah, love that. For the folks that are listening to this podcast and are interested in what Ronnie's talking about with the conference, and to get face-to-face time with Ronnie and Josh at the conferences, we'll be at two locations. The first one's going to be in Kelowna, British Columbia. That's going to be October 7th and 9th at the KF Center for Excellence. And November 10th through 12th will be in Irving, Texas at the Irving Convention Center. So looking forward to seeing everybody there. It's going to be an awesome, transformative conference. Josh, from your perspective, when you look back over the course of your career, how would this type of conference impacted your career movement and your student knowledge base, do you think, over the years?
Yeah, well, I'll just add to what Ronnie said about, maintenance has been historically underrepresented in the public eye, I think. Internally in these in companies, obviously these companies value their maintenance teams, and they spend a lot of money making sure their teams are well educated and taken care of. But we tend to be the type that doesn't talk about our work at home, and I think that's kind of led to this culture of where the maintenance personnel don't get put front and center. So but now we're seeing things like these conferences, Maintenance Magazine, DOM Magazine, some of the influencers out there now in the maintenance industry is really starting to change that. And that's critical as far as I'm concerned to continuing to bring more talent into the industry. We have to talk about ourselves. We have to talk about the interesting parts of our job and continue to expand that. These kind of conferences could certainly continue to help push that to the forefront and really make young people aware that such an industry exists and it's worthwhile.
Yeah. Which you talk about the networking that takes place at these things, and I know when I go to a conference, you'll sit down at the bar and you'll have a conversation with somebody, and in the course of conversation, be like, oh, you're having the same problem I am. You both have been striving to find a solution to the problem that you've been dealing with for years. And over the course of a couple of beers, and some, mixed conversations with some other folks, you're like, oh, there's a solution right here from this person who's already dealt with this. And so I like that we don't have to reinvent the wheel in that way. These conferences really provide a solution in a lot of ways, a way where we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's a cool way to network. It's a cool way to meet and learn people. And then you talk about career advancement. You never know how these little interactions with people will play into the larger portion of your career. I love all that.
Well, there's a wealth of knowledge out there too, right? So you talk to these people that have been in the industry 20 plus years, and there's a lot to know about this industry. And no person can carry it all, but interacting with your peers is a great opportunity to, stay up to speed on the latest of what's going on.
Yeah, that breadth of knowledge is what's always super impressive to me in the maintainers world. I mean, it's not isolated to systems anymore. Your IT folks now, dealing with mission equipment and all kinds of things that, I think 20 years ago people would have been like, "There's no way I can do all this stuff," and now we're asking folks to carry that breadth of knowledge and do it well. So I love what this conference is going to provide for the industry. I love the networking, the education, the training that's going to take place in both Kelowna and Irving. So again, thank you guys for your support and look forward to seeing you there. Going back to you, Josh, can you kind of give us a thumbnail of your career and how you wound up in the position you're at now with GPMS?
Yeah. Well, I started basically right out of high school, looking for, what I wanted to do. I was mechanically inclined. I knew I wanted to fix things, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to work on. I kind of fell into aviation when I was starting to look at automotive schools, and someone mentioned that in Houston, they had an A&P school. And I learned a little bit about it, and hey, it was paying a lot more than cars paid back then. I think it's probably reversed now, but it was enough to keep my interest. I was always interested in aviation, just never realized there was a pathway, right? So got involved in that. I graduated right when 9/11 happened. All the airlines were laying off. Airlines were going out of business. So I was very fortunate to basically starting to look in helicopters, right? None of the helicopter companies came to our school, so it wasn't anybody's first choice. But in hindsight, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because what I really loved about helicopters right off the bat was that you got to work on the whole machine, right? You weren't stuck changing tires for 10 years. You weren't doing, in the sewing shop, sewing seats necessarily. You got access to the whole aircraft. And I was lucky enough to get hired right out of school by PHI. Lucky enough for 6 months to work in the town where I lived, which is pretty rare as a mechanic these days. I was one of the youngest guys PHI had hired in the previous 10 years. So I was fortunate to be, a lot of guys put me under their wing, and I learned a lot very quickly at a very busy base that had over 35 helicopters of all different types, shapes, and sizes. Really got to touch a lot of things and learned a lot real quickly.
I think how you got hired by PHI is a pretty funny story, or a pretty fun story.
Well, yeah, I just randomly picked up a phone book and flipped through. I was looking for companies at the local airport there, and PHI's phone number was in the phone book, and I called it up, and it just so happened that the hiring manager, who doesn't actually work at that location, just happened to be there visiting and picked up the phone and brought me in for an interview the next day, and then I was hired on my birthday a month later, so it was pretty cool.
That's wild. But it's funny because if I were to ask my kids today, do you know what a phone book is? They'd look at me like I had no clue what you're talking about. You know, it's such a it was a pivotal piece of our life for a long time, and now it doesn't exist, which is really weird.
It really dates you though when you talk about it.
It does. We were in London recently, and those iconic London phone booths. Like now they're just for photos; they don't get used for anything else. But my kids, same thing. Look at that. Like, what the heck is that? And why is that attractive to you to take a photo inside of a phone booth? I mean, I don't really know. Generational, I guess. So you got hired via the phone book. You place a phone call. Like, okay, come in for an interview, and you're hired. Did you have any experience as an AMP prior to that interview?
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
No.
Wow.
Just AMP school, right? And that's why it was very uncommon for helicopter companies, especially, to hire people right out of school. They're a busy operation. They need people to be skilled so that they can, carry out the tasks assigned to them. But luckily, they had an opportunity for a new hire, an apprentice, essentially, what you are when you come out of A&P school. And a lot of people spent a lot of time and gave a lot of themselves to help bring me up in the industry. So I'm very thankful for that. And like I said, starting in the industry at a time when it was extremely busy in the Gulf of Mexico, just hundreds and hundreds of aircraft operating offshore. Worked on the beach for a number of years, and then got the opportunity to work offshore. So I lived and worked at an offshore platform for 3 years. It was one of the last remaining offshore platforms that had helicopters based offshore every night. So we had 2 407s and a 206 that lived offshore, that stayed out offshore every night that we took care of. So it was a busy platform. It was a manned platform. About 50 people on average were there every night. It was about 80 miles south of Galveston, Texas.
Wow.
Kept my freezer stocked with red snapper for a long time.
And you cast the line off the platform?
You don't cast it. You just go straight down. And by the time you get that fish to the top, you're tired because it's a long way down.
Can you talk about the living conditions on those platforms? I've seen videos, documenting the interior and what it looks like to live in an environment like that. It reminds me kind of what life would be like on an aircraft carrier. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's set up a lot like that. It's a 4-bunk room, so you can have up to 4 people in a room at a time. It's very close quarters. Space is not in abundance. But this was a big platform. So we had a big communal area with a big screen TV where we watched wrestling and telenovelas were all it was on 24 hours a day. Because it was a mixture of, Louisiana Roughnecks, and that was what we watched. And then no shortage of food. So there was a whole wall of candy bars and everything. And so the average, I'd say, we when they do the calculations for weight and balance on aircraft, the average is 185 pounds per person. When they do that out there, it was more like, it was well above 200, the average guy out.
On the candy bars.
All big guys. And yeah, we had it was fun. There was a gym area that we got to work out in, and other than that, it was pretty simple. Back then, we didn't have high-speed internet offshore, so it was a lot of books, and we basically worked noon to midnight. So we really wouldn't do anything until the end of the day when the helicopters landed for the day, except for fuel and take care of any midday issues that popped up. But most of our work was at night. And then when we were done, if it was an easy night, we went fishing. That's basically what we did.
That's cool.
I saw some very cool stuff out there. Seen whale sharks, sea turtles, orcas, even in the Gulf of Mexico. Pretty awesome. In hindsight, at the time, it was 7 days offshore seemed like an eternity. But,
Sure.
When break day came around, you were ready to go. But it was great. It was a great experience. Worked offshore with another one of my mentors who taught me a lot. Got to do some very tough things in a very tough environment, changing engines offshore, doing all the things in horrible weather. It builds character for sure.
Can you talk about that environment as far as, maintaining in that environment? It's corrosive. You've got wind, you've got rain, fog, all the kind of elements that make it difficult to work in. Was there a rolling motion that is associated with the platform itself or not at all?
On very windy days, you would get some motion at the top, but it was big. It's a big 3-deck platform that's all interconnected, so it was pretty stiff compared to some of the other like toadstool platforms and stuff that I've been on. I've been on other platforms where they're not manned, just a single stanchion with a deck, and literally you can feel yourself rocking back and forth. But no, it was pretty stable. Obviously, it's one of the harshest environments in the world. The wind and the salt air just wants to eat everything up. So it's a constant battle to keep up with your corrosion control. We use a lot of different chemicals. Obviously, we're washing aircraft every single day. And you just have to be attentive. You can't rest on your laurels out there. That it'll get away from you pretty quick and can cause some serious damage to aircraft that, if you're the mechanic and you find some corrosion on a deck that you haven't been taking care of, then, it's on you. So yeah, probably more so. I've never seen it like that anywhere else that I've worked. How much just constant cleaning, lubrication, corrosion coatings, all these things that we do to keep them healthy. Company that I worked for had a corrosion control program, so we had some guidance and stuff to follow. But a lot of it was tribal knowledge as well, how to keep things healthy out there. Once the digital systems were starting to be all introduced, FADEC controlled engines, things like that, it got even tougher. Digital systems are very susceptible to changes in resistance and corrosion in the connectors. And so that was tough transition. But we had some, new chemicals come onto the market that made it a lot easier, and that are kind of, standard nowadays. But back then we had to kind of figure it out.
How much contact enhancer did you go through?
We went through a lot. Yeah. I mean, now you don't leave home without it, right? But
yeah,
there was a time when we were chasing ghost FADEC issues for months and months and months until, we got a handle on it. But
what was your least favorite
environment
job to perform deployed out in a rig?
Oh, I didn't have a least favorite really. I always was like, whatever you don't want to do, that's what I'll do. I wanted to do the hard things because I knew that without doing the hard things, you weren't going to get the knowledge, right? And I wanted the knowledge because in this business, knowledge is power. You're only going to get a job if you're the guy that knows how to do that, right? There's a regulation that essentially states that you can't do a job on an aircraft unless you've done that job before or been properly trained. It's a pretty broad statement in the regulation, but the regulator uses it as a lever when auditing companies, and therefore companies put in these training programs and all that, but it costs a lot of money to train people. So we didn't have access to a lot of, in-depth training off the job, right? So I knew the fastest way to get the knowledge was to do the job, right? And so we had OJT checklists. So I wanted to be the guy that did everything 3 times and got everything checked off on my OJT so that I had the skill set when the company was looking for people to fill new opportunities. And I have that knowledge to do it.
Wow.
But if there was any least favorite part of it, it was definitely the weather. I've never been as cold as I was, 38 degrees with 40 knots of wind and blowing rain, changing an engine. I've been in sub-zero temperatures and not been that miserable.
Yeah.
So the weather is always tough. Invest in your outerwear. Obviously, you got good kit, good rain gear. I spent as much on my, kit on my rain gear as I did on a lot of my really expensive tools. So, you're prepared to take it on,
Yeah, that's actually an interesting conversation as well. We've talked to folks that have worked in Antarctica and pretty much all over the world. And it's interesting to hear, what works and what doesn't in these challenging environments. So for you, when you think about your kit, can you kind of give us an overview of what that was and what worked with it?
Well, no, it wasn't anything special. They just have some really high quality, rainproof, Gore-Tex gear that you'd get for hiking and things like that would work for aviation. Obviously you wanted it to breathe, but you wanted it to be waterproof and you wanted some layers. So, you can get warm if it's cold, but also, strip it down if all you need is rain protection. So,
yeah.
And you can't buy cheap stuff in this business. And you need stuff that can last and durable. You're going to have your arms stuck up in holes with safety wire and all things trying to snag it. And so, there's one characteristic about, I think it's probably all mechanics, not just aviation mechanics, but we kind of like to flex on our kit. We want to have the Snap-on tools. We want to have the brand name flashlight. We want and so especially as a young man, that was where I spent a lot of my money in the early days was on my kit. So, it was fun. And the older I get, the less I'm focused on that. But
yeah,
it was still for a time, probably my biggest expenditure was my tools and gear.
I think there is something to be said for quality, investing in quality equipment. Sometimes it's not necessarily quality. You're paying for a price tag, but I think a lot of the times, especially when it comes to tools, you actually are paying for quality, so I can definitely relate to what you're talking about. Going back to wanting to do the hard things, I think that's something that is one of the hardest traits to teach somebody. We talk about that a lot in leadership development. Helping coach my son's JV baseball team in his high school, which is really cool because I played baseball on the field that I'm now helping coach on, and it was neat. But we tell the kids the 2 things you can control are attitude and effort, and those are kind of the 2 things that come to mind when you talk about wanting to do the hard things. Can you talk about how that philosophy has helped your career over the span of from where you started to where you are now, and how you might encourage someone to do the same thing?
But yeah, and just going back to the fact that knowledge is power in this industry. I mean, no one cares what your certifications are. If you can't execute the tasks, if you can't do the work and do it safely and do it well and do it reliably and do it fast, you don't have any value, or at least you have less value. It's not an industry where you can rest on a degree on a wall and say, yep, that's what I'm worth. In this industry, you're only worth what you can accomplish, what you can do. And I think it goes back to the same kind of values that are in a lot of these trades, right? When you work with your hands, ultimately, you're the guy that's got to carry out the task. There's certainly other layers to the business, but getting started, you don't have value unless you can do the job well. And no amount of pieces of paper can say that if you're not out there seeking the knowledge. And, when you're looking at the experienced guys in the industry, what are they looking for? Well, they're looking for guys that are hungry, right? I mean, they're looking for guys that want to learn. Obviously, they don't have to pass on that knowledge. It's not their job to necessarily train you. and give you everything they know. So, and they're busy, right? Everyone's busy in this industry. So to take the time to explain, to simplify, have patience, all the things it takes to be a good teacher, they're not going to waste that on someone that doesn't ask for it, that doesn't want it, that's not hungry to grow as an individual. And so I wanted to earn their respect, obviously, by showing them that I cared about the knowledge. I wanted to learn from the best in the industry, and I wanted to continue that legacy, right? And so much is written in this business. Everything is procedural, more and more all the time. There was a time it wasn't so procedural, and there's a lot of tribal knowledge, for better or worse. And to come up the right way, you needed other people's help. And there's no islands in aviation maintenance for sure. And so I just recognized that early, that I couldn't do it without their help. And I wanted to show them that I was worthwhile, to invest their time in. And I think if you have that attitude going through your whole career, you'll have opportunities open to you that you wouldn't have otherwise. People recognize that you're motivated for the right reasons. And you can get a long way just being willing to listen and learn,
Yeah, it's a small community. I think you establish this reputation that you're hungry, you're eager to learn, you've got a good attitude. Again, you can control your attitude and effort. So once you've proven that in the industry, when it comes time for someone to stick their neck out in the line and say, this person's a qualified individual for these reasons, it's easy to do that versus the opposite, right? And sometimes you might be motivated to get someone out of his shop. Just, you'll say, oh yeah, he's amazing. So I think sometimes you take that with a grain of salt too. When you go for a recommendation, like, oh, this person's amazing. But I think what you're describing is really important for career development. Ronnie, any insight there from you on that?
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, and save lives and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
Yeah, I think what Josh has said is what he wants to pass along. Josh, I think you're a member of the VAI Workforce Development Committee and various other things, right? It's taking all these things that have been passed down from your mentors and being that leader to find your mentees and take a look at those people that are always wanting to say, yes, give me more, I want to do more, and showing them that, like, hey, you can be a leader too. You are a leader too by already saying yes. And that's what we need more of is more people wanting to check that box and check all three boxes on their OJT and saying, I want more. Yeah. And when you see somebody that's just not taking that next step, push them, right? Push them to take that next step. You can do more. I know you can. And so, it's a crucial part of our industry. And, that's one of the things I'm looking forward to most at that Vertical MRO conference, right? Is that I think it's very free or very discounted registration for a lot of the people in these schools or these early AMPs to come and learn and do that networking. So between what VAI is doing from the Workforce Development Committee to what Vertical is doing from these conferences to just as an individual, be that leader is what I like to see in this, what's going on.
Yeah, I think leadership's obviously one of my favorite topics to discuss. I feel like there's a misconception that leadership is a title, and I don't think that's true at all. I think, Josh, what you're doing from day one, you're establishing your leadership traits amongst your peers by doing the hard things, and that goes a long ways. You look at leadership development and how that's prepared you from doing the hard things to where you are now. You've got a lot of perspective to lean into the folks that you work with, because of the experiences you've had over the course of your career. So I love that statement, that philosophy, and how it kind of leans into leadership development and leadership in general. So well done, sir. So going back to your career, you're offshore working on the rigs. Where do you go from there?
Well, I got my experience offshore. I was, living out there for, like I said, almost 3 years, and, got to know those aircraft pretty well and just kind of got bored, to be honest. I was looking for another challenge. looking to continue learning. And I was hungering to get back home. So being home every night again was an appeal to me. So a job came open in the air medical side of the industry, or the air medical side of the business. At the time, one still today, PHI had two organizations, one on the oil and gas and one for air medical. And they were opening up a dual base. So there was two bases close to each other, where they were they had a 7-7 schedule for two mechanics. That's really rare, actually, to have a 7-7 job in air medical these days. It used to be most of the time it's a full-time 365 day a year job. But with a 7-7 schedule, you really got your time off on top of, being, on call 24 hours a day for 7 days, basically. But got into the air medical industry, taking care of 2407s. Got exposed to all the great things that these helicopters do for the community. I was very proud to be a part of that. It was a whole nother type of challenge. Like I said, being on call 24 hours a day. Anything happens, that aircraft is on call to go pick people up off the freeway or transfer somebody between the hospital and critical care. And if the aircraft was not operational, it was an emergency, literally, right? So it's a much more stressful environment to be in as a technician. Just not knowing, for that time that you're on shift, any waking minute, you could get that phone call. Hey, I'm stuck in a field out here and my engine won't start, and you've got to, I remember having to drive the wrong way down a freeway, to get access to an aircraft because I had to change a starter because the aircraft, shut down in a field to load a patient and then couldn't get started again. So I put the patient in an ambulance and we had to come rescue the aircraft. So those kind of scenarios, aircraft stuck on the top of helipads, on top of hospitals. It was an adventure.
What's the most unique place you found yourself going to work on an aircraft, whether it's the HUMS industry or anywhere else, to get it back airborne?
Well, I was probably on a toadstool offshore, on a small platform offshore where there was not enough room to land another helicopter on the platform. So the way you had to get there was you flew to a nearby platform, you got on a boat, the boat took you to that platform, they used a crane to pick you up in a basket and swing you over 150 feet off the water onto the deck of the platform next to the helicopter so that you could get up there and work on it. And back in those days, there wasn't a lot of prior, let's just say safety really hadn't become the forefront yet.
I wish it wasn't real.
So, these days, there's no way you would do that. But I went out offshore by myself with tool, never been out there before. This was prior to me working offshore, by the way, when I did this. I had never been offshore before. You're the guy today. Congratulations. Go over here, get on the aircraft. It's going to take you here, get on this boat, and just kind of do what they tell you to do and try to be as careful as you can. But swinging off the edge of this basket 150 feet off the water, never being offshore before in my life. It was a rude awakening, but an adventure.
How'd you feel about that ride from the water up to the top, 150 feet in a Stokes basket, it sounds like?
I was like, okay, well, everybody seems to think this is normal. I think I should be inside the basket, not hanging to the outside. But they specifically told me, no, you can't get in the inside of the basket. So
I said, nope,
I just did what they told me. I figured somebody knew what was going on.
Wow, that's wild. So you're in the HUMS industry, and where does your career go from there?
Yeah, so I spent several years in HUMS. And again, I just, I kind of ran its course. I was looking for something else to do. I applied for the Antarctic project. So at the time, PHI had the contract, the NSF contract in Antarctica, flying, I think at the time it was 3 212s and 2 AS350s. So I applied for that job. I got it. I went through all the medicals, got my what they call your penguin pass, your approval to go down there. I had a plan. My wife and I was going to go down there for 6 months. We were going to live the rest of the year in Costa Rica. My wife was going to teach English. And we had this whole plan. what we were going to do with all this extra money we were going to make from being, working down on the ice. And I was in school getting 212 training. And I just happened to be discussing with one of the guys, hey, this is great. We're going to be making so much money down there. And he says, what are you talking about? And I'm like, oh, yeah, this is what they told me I was going to be making. And he's like, no, that ain't the way it works. So I went over and talked to the international director, and there was a little fine print that I didn't quite get, which was you make this much money if you go down there for 6 months and come home for 6 months. But if you want to make the extra money, you got to go down there for 6 months and then come back and work 7 and 7 in the Gulf for the rest of the year.
Oh.
So that was the number they advertised. And I was like, man, I'm already working 6 months a year. So I was really, in hindsight, I wish I would have done it. That's the only experience I really regret missing. I wish I would have gone for at least 1 year down there. A good friend of mine went right behind me, spent a couple of seasons on the ice, and I got to kind of talk to him when he got back and see some pictures, and enough to be really jealous of the experience. Pretty exciting down there. But that's the one.
Now you get to support. Now you get to support Pathfinder as they're doing that mission down there, right?
And now we got a customer that's operating down there with our system, so it's pretty cool. But at that point, my eyes were wandering. I wanted something international. I thought about looking into firefighting, but I found a job opened up over in West Africa. It was BP was starting up a contract for a fleet of S-76 C++s over there. So big group of us got hired as technicians. Took a long time to get the operation rolling. So before we could get over there, I got the word that not only was I going over as a technician, but I was being assigned as one of the QA guys for the operation. So it was my, jumping into the flames to be a quality assurance guy for a very persnickety group of BP auditors that had very specific requirements for how the operation was going to be run. And I got to be the face of that department for the company there. It was a Angolan company that was kind of just starting up in that organization. There wasn't a lot of, it was all expats doing the work. So BP needed a representative within the business, or that two representatives that were back to back to each other to, make sure that the operation got set up like they wanted. So I got a lot of quick, fast, and dirty experience with how to run a maintenance program. We had to build a maintenance program from scratch. We had to set up an ERP. We had to set up, a maintenance tracking system. We had to set up internal maintenance procedures, all of the things that are required to run a program, basically. Everything that a DOM would have to do locally, to get proof from the FAA, we had to do to demonstrate to BP that we had an operation that was safe and reliable and all those things. So cut my teeth in aviation management then over the course of a few years. I transitioned within the same business later into the training department for the company, training technicians on the aircraft. So again, got another kind of a crash course in, hey, we need you to be knowledgeable so you can teach everybody, right? So literally staying up all night reading maintenance manuals like I'd never read them before, like reading the whole preface section that talks about how everything works and understanding how it works, being able to, draw wiring diagrams and really, to teach something, you really got to know it well. Right. Yeah. So, I got familiar with, so many aircraft in a deeper level than I ever would have otherwise. Again, driven by that, I want more, right? I want more knowledge. I want more capabilities. Yeah. And I finished my career in Angola through starting up a HUMS program for them. So we had a fleet of Bell 430s, Bell 427s, and 412s operating. They all had a HUMS system installed. The company had contracted with an outside agency to do quote unquote monitoring of the system. But nobody was really doing anything with the data. They were getting, weekly reports, PDF files, and emails, but nobody was really doing anything with it. It just so happened that there was issues developing in the background nobody was aware of. One day, a pilot was on approach in a Bell 430 with a cabin full of people, and the left-hand engine exploded. It loud bang, all the things that happen when you lose an engine. Luckily, he was able to land the aircraft safely. No one was injured. After the fact, we said, hey, they said, hey, we got a HUMS system on there. Why didn't this detect it? Well, as a matter of fact, it did. And here's all the data. And we have reports going back, months that this engine was deteriorating. Ended up, they found a cracked PTO shaft that once it propagated far enough, the turbine wheel came out of alignment, made contact with the inside wear sleeve, and ejected most of the blades out of the engine. Wow. What was really scary is that in the investigation, they found one of the turbine blades got ejected, punctured the tail boom, and nearly severed the tail rotor control rod. Wow. So you can imagine what would have happened if they lost tail rotor authority on that auto rotation coming in. It would have been catastrophic. As a guy that was always looking for the next thing, they said, hey, we need a HUMS program, and are you interested? And I'm like, I'm very interested. Let me dive into this thing head first. So I went into it. I started digging in, working with the outside agency that was doing the monitoring. We did some research and figured out that we had 4 other engines that were doing the same thing. Some of the same behaviors, some of the early indicators, pulled those engines out of service. They all found the same problem on those engines due to an assembly error during overhaul on all the engines from the same entity. So a lot of money. We spent a lot of money getting those engines. Just getting the engine in and out of the country can sometimes take a year, let alone all the money with shipping and all that. So better than a catastrophic accident, obviously, but learned a lot about HUMS very quickly. Not only, doing the analysis, figuring, out what to do with the data, but setting up a program so that, the company has guidance to follow. When X happens, you do this. Just like the same reasons you need a maintenance program are the reasons you need a HUMS program. Something to dictate actions based on certain findings.
That's a wild story. I can't imagine being in that situation. And then knowing that there was technology on board that could have identified this situation developing, and we didn't have something in place to identify that and deal with it. For folks that are maybe unfamiliar with HUMS, can you give us an overview of HUMS and its usage and how that data can prevent something like what you just described from happening? This podcast is powered by Vertical Magazine, which is more than just your favorite rotorcraft publication. Vertical's grown far beyond print to become a dynamic multimedia brand that keeps you informed, inspired, and connected. With digital access via verticalmag.com, podcasts on the HeliCAST platform, rotorcraft buying and selling via helitrader.com, helicopter maintenance conferences, extensive reach across social media, and an impressive catalog of visual content, visit verticalmag.com to learn more.
Sure. So HUMS stands for Health and Usage Monitoring Systems. There's been a alphabet soup of acronyms in the past that all kind of mean different things: vibration health monitoring, condition-based monitoring, terms like that, IVHM from the military side. But it all essentially, the core part of a HUMS system is a vibration monitoring system. Okay, we're using sensors that pick up on vibrations from rotating components, and then we measure basically what's normal data. And when we see something abnormal, we know that the machine is not acting, that there's a defect with that machine, basically. So all aircraft are built within tolerances, right? So they all should have a certain baseline level of vibration. And so we can take that data and say, okay, this is normal data. Measure that vibration over time and then say, okay, this is no longer normal, right? We can measure these defects and say that something's wrong with the component. We need to take some kind of action. And vibration analysis has been around for a long, long time. There's a lot of math underneath it all that has been around for a long time and fully developed. So it's not an emerging science, so to speak, but it's relatively new in helicopter aviation, starting basically in the mid 90s in the North Sea. They had several high profile accidents in large aircraft that killed a lot of people. And they, several groups started looking into borrowing from the technology and industry in manufacturing and chemical refinement, where they were trying to increase the life of their pumps and their motors and different things like that to make sure their operations stay profitable. They started looking at leveraging that same technology in helicopter world. A series of sensors spread around the airframe to measure all the vibration of interest, some system for displaying it, some system for detecting deviations from normal. So typically it's a statistical analysis of the historical data to say, like I said, this is normal, this is abnormal. And then some training and some tools to basically say when to take action, right? Ultimately, you can be monitoring all that data, but if you don't have some kind of indicator to say, okay, this is no longer good, now we need to do something. And that's kind of the core of what HUMS is.
And what you described in the, talking about the engine explosion you described, you said that they had received PDF reports with all this data that kind of would have identified what you're describing. You think about back in that time, it probably did take somebody sitting down, reviewing that data analytically to look for an anomaly like you described. Whereas now, computer technology in the way it is, we've got these robust systems in place that can look at that data and analyze it and come up with, hey, this is something you should pay attention to. Can you talk about how those new systems have helped in the way that you're describing?
Yeah, I'll say early HUMS systems were plagued with false positives. The vibration environment is very noisy. Obviously, there's a lot of things turning, a lot of things happening in a helicopter. It's basically trying to tear itself apart at all times. So figuring out the right balance of early detection while not picking up things that are erroneous, it took some time for the industry to figure out. And the problem with that is, if you're an operator and you see that, 10 times that the thing has been wrong about it being a problem, it doesn't take long before you stop trusting what you're seeing, right? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of operators, including this one, kind of lost trust in what the data could do, and therefore basically wasn't using it anymore. The new tools out there, a lot of what used to have to be done by a trained analysis technician, someone that's been trained in how to review data, how to analyze trends, how to spot specific types of vibration phenomena in the data. There's algorithms out there that can do it on its own now, right? And so we're leveraging the power of, obviously, computers and cloud-based systems to make this a lot less difficult for operators to implement. You don't have to have nearly the depth of knowledge that you used to get valuable information out of a system.
Yeah, this again, go back to technology. This is one of the things that I love. A solution being provided by this different form of technology.
Stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, and save lives and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
This podcast is powered by Vertical Magazine, which is more than just your favorite rotorcraft publication. Vertical's grown far beyond print to become a dynamic multimedia brand that keeps you informed, inspired, and connected. With digital access via verticalmag.com, podcasts on the HeliCAST platform, rotorcraft buying and selling via helitrader.com, helicopter maintenance conferences, extensive reach across social media, and an impressive catalog of visual content, visit verticalmag.com to learn more. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Vertical MRO Podcast, brought to you by Vertical HeliCASTS in a partnership with Vertical Magazine. In this two-part series, we explore the transformative impact of health and usage monitoring systems, also known as HUMS, on the maintenance industry and helicopter flight safety, featuring insights from experts Kethan and Ronnie Ries from GPMS. We discuss the critical importance of industry conferences, including the inaugural Vertical MRO Conference, happening from October 7th through 9th at the KF Center for Excellence in Kelowna, British Columbia, and again from November 10th through 12th at the Irving Convention Center in Irving, Texas. During this conversation, Josh shared his unique journey from maintaining helicopters in challenging offshore environments to his role in air medical services, emphasizing the do hard things mindset that has shaped his career in the MRO community. Together with Ronnie, they highlighted advancements in HUMS technology and the role of data analytics in enhancing maintenance practices and the promising future of condition-based maintenance within aviation. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the Vertical MRO Podcast. Your support helps us reach more listeners and share valuable insights into the helicopter aviation industry. For more information about the Vertical MRO Conference, including registration details and the agenda, visit our website at verticalmro.com. Don't miss this opportunity to connect, learn, and grow within the MRO community. We hope this discussion has inspired you to consider how innovative technologies can optimize operations and improve safety in our industry. Join us next time as we continue to explore the dynamic world of helicopter maintenance. Cheers.